Two strange apparitions have been seen at Angola, Louisiana State Penitentiary in Louisiana. Inmates are reporting to have witnessed firsthand uncanny, strange apparitions that have appeared in a single location on the prison grounds. That's right. Inmates are saying that they are seeing something that a lot of people would consider scary or unbelievable. What they're saying they're seeing, the average person who hasn't had spiritual eyes to see or has never had an opportunity to see something supernatural would be saying that this is not real. It's only in their imaginations, and they're all going crazy inside Angola, Louisiana, especially what they're witnessing on this specific location inside the prison grounds. I recently spoke to an inmate who is currently serving time inside the Louisiana State Penitentiary. And as I was discussing what's going on at the prison, the conversation or the topic came up of the supernatural and what kind of supernatural elements or supernatural things has he heard of that has happened in the past and that is currently happening now at Angola. As you know, Angola is an old slave plantation. It is the site of an old slave plantation where, many Africans from Angola in Africa would have been forced to do field work, and they would have worked under some very harsh and inhumane conditions, and many of which probably and likely died underneath this forced labor and probably were unalived by the people who were the ones who oversaw them or even owned them as slaves during that period in America's history. But it's not the only thing that has the possibility of opening supernatural portals from things that happened in the past that possibly were unjust to give rise of demonic spirits or lingering spirits that may be occupying the 1,800 plus acres of land that consists of Louisiana State Penitentiary. It also could be because of the Tunica Indians. As you know, there are burial grounds from the Tunica Indians at Angola prison, right? You can go look this up. There's no shortage of articles from lay people like myself who just have an interest in it to professionals who study ancient Indian burial grounds and ancient Indian history. So we don't know what happened there. And we know, if you know anything about American Indians, they had a tendency to tap into the supernatural, to be in tune with the supernatural. Well, as I was talking to this inmate, he was sharing with me something that recently happened to him while he was visiting a specific church on the premise of Angola. If you know anything about Angola, it's the largest prison in the United States of America. It also has over a dozen individual churches. That's right. Chapels, churches, whatever you want to call it, buildings that are dedicated to people's religion. And it wasn't until the year 2013 that the Catholics finally had a place to call their own, at Angola. And it was because of a man by the name of, and bear with me because I have some notes here, Robert Sanchez Majorada. Robert Sanchez Majorada had this vision to invest for the inmates at Angola so that they can build a Catholic chapel, a place where Catholics can go and worship, not a place that was shared by many other churches. If you know anything about prisons, often one chapel or one building could be used by multiple different religions. That's right. The Muslims could use it. The Jewish converts that are inside the prison can use it. The Mennonites can use it. The non-denominational Christians can use it. Anybody can use it. And even in the prisons, they even have to let people do. I was in Louisiana and they had Wiccans. That's right. They had Wiccans, which is witches and warlocks. They would come to the prison and have a service as well. And of course, this was not in Angola. This was in Allen Correctional Center, where I seen the Wiccan priests and priestesses come and have their ritualistic services. And I even had friends who were involved with the Wiccan religion. So inside the prison system, you're allowed to worship whoever you want to worship, and you're allowed to partake in whatever religious service you want to partake in. And specifically at Angola, Warden Burl Kane had the audacity to push religion at the facility because he believed religion was going to be the thing that helped the facility become a place where inmates wouldn't have to, live in a violent altercation every single day. That because of religion, because of Christianity specifically, that inmates would find peace within themselves to treat one another with decency and respect. And underneath his leadership, when you talk to most inmates who've done time at Angola, a lot of them that I've personally talked to said they believe Warden Burl Cain did help implement a more peaceful living environment for the inmates at Angola. So that's kind of the common thread. Will you get that from 100% of them? No, absolutely not. But anyway, this man, Robert Sanchez Majorda, partners with another man, George L. Valdez. George L. Valdez is also an ex-con and ex-narco who did 10 years inside the federal prison system. And I'll put a picture of George Valdez right here. This is George Valdez, and he is a redeemed, and he's passed away. He's no longer with us. But he and Robert Sanchez put their money together to fund the building of a Catholic sanctuary at Angola. It cost roughly $550,000 to build this sanctuary for the Catholics, the Catholic inmates on the prison grounds. And when they built this facility, they said it was built a little bit over a month. The inmates worked 12-hour shifts nonstop to get this facility built in over a month. It's about 8,000 square foot. And it's referred to by the inmates in the prison as the Alamo because it was built with the thought, when the inmates were designing it, they designed it with the image of the Alamo. And so that's what it's called by the Angola inmates, the Alamo. So there's a Texas connection to the Louisiana State Penitentiary from the inmates themselves who nicknamed this sanctuary, this Catholic sanctuary, the Alamo. And I will put a picture of it right here. It looks just like the Alamo. When you picture the Alamo, that's what you picture. That's why they call it the Alamo. But technically speaking, it is called and is named because of the funders who funded it. It's Our Lady of Guadalupe. Bear with me. Our Lady of Guadalupe. And that's where we get to the current conversation I'm having with someone who's in Angola. And I'm asking him, has he seen anything superstitious or supernatural lately inside the prison? He said, it's funny you should ask that. He said, I was born Catholic, which most people in Louisiana, if you know anything about Louisiana, most people in Louisiana are born Catholic, especially the more south in Louisiana you get, closer to New Orleans, the more likelihood that you're going to have someone who's Catholic. Inside all the parishes, there are parishioners, and most of the parishioners are Catholic. They were born Catholic, baptized Catholic, and a lot of them are died Catholic. But a lot of Catholics convert to, baptism, they become Protestants and non-denominational. Anyway, he's also a non-denominational from what I assume, but he's telling me he decided to go to a Catholic service at Angola because he's doing a life sentence in Angola. And when he went to the Catholic service, he said he was in there sitting in the chapel, and there wasn't a lot of people in there. And there's a statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Now, if you know anything about Our Lady of Guadalupe, this is the Virgin Mary who appeared to a man in the late 1500s. I think around 15. I don't know if around Juan Diego. He appeared to Juan Diego in 1531. She appeared to Juan Diego in 1531 in Mexico, near Mexico City. He brought it up to the person who was in charge, the monk or the Pope who was in charge of him, in the 1500s in Mexico City, and said, look, the Virgin Mary appeared to me, and they call her, Our Lady of Guadalupe. So we want to build a shrine to her. And he said, no. And Juan Diego said, well, listen, I'm telling you what I saw. And the bishop he brought this information to, who can give him the go ahead to build a shrine. He couldn't just do this on his own. He couldn't overstep the bounds. He had to get permission. And the person who was in charge of the monies then said, no, we can't approve you to build this. She didn't appear to me. She appeared to you. If she appears to me, then we'll build it. He said he went back and he received another image from the Virgin Mary, and she said to gather some bloomed roses. He gathered some bloomed roses. He put them in a white sheet, and when he met with the bishop said, "Okay, where's the proof? Where is she?" And when he opened, he said, "I have these roses." And when he opened the sheet, the roses were all squished down, and they had bled into the white sheet, and they made the face or the image of the Virgin Mary. And the bishop said, I have seen, now I believe. We will build a shrine, a place where we can worship, you know what I mean, and come and pray to the Virgin Mary, which is now called Our Lady of Guadalupe. So he's sitting in the church and he's praying, and he looks at the statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and he says the statue is kind of just a regular statue. It's a stoic statue. You've seen religious statues. And he said all of a sudden he just saw the statue, she moved her head and she looked them eye to eye. He said, he looked and he's like, is that statue moving? He said, the statue, Our Lady of Guadalupe, moved her head, looked in his eyes for a moment, and then moved her head back and set her back in the normal position. He said he was so stunned, he looked around to see if anybody else saw it, but nobody else was even looking at the statue, just him. So after his time of prayer, he finds the priest who's over the Catholic sanctuary, and he asked him, he said, where did that statue come from? And he said that statue came from Mexico. So the statue itself supposedly, allegedly comes from Mexico, and it was sent to Angola, as a gift. And other inmates, he tells me, before he had this experience, he had other inmates say that they saw the statue move, but he also had other inmates say that they didn't see the statue move, but they saw Our Lady of Guadalupe moving throughout the grounds, specifically at the location and in the church where the Alamo Our Lady of Guadalupe Church is built on Angola premises. He told me he would get more information and tell me more, but his firsthand account was that he saw the statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe look him in his eyes and move. Now, I don't know where you stand religiously or where you stand at in your faith. Obviously, Angola has a bunch of different faiths. There are Catholics there, there are Baptists there, there are Pentecostals there, there are Muslims there. There's a lot of different faiths on the grounds of Angola. Catholics tend to have different beliefs than non-denominational Christians when it comes to the Virgin Mary specifically. A lot of Christian faiths do not pray to the Virgin Mary, but Catholics do pray to the Virgin Mary, and they pray to the saints. So you hear a lot of Catholics saying they saw these apparitions, you know what I mean? But I personally have never seen a statue move, but I've heard enough stories where people have seen statues move. And this is something to think about, and I'm going to dig deeper into it. And it's just really interesting on how this story came about, how Angola, you would think that Warden Burrow Kane, Warden Burrow Kane's mother told him that at Angola, when he took the job, she said, son, just what she told the warden, his mother. She said, and this is what helped the Warden Burrow Kane become one of the most religious wardens in American history, to help transform the landscape of the largest prison in America to a place of where I think since he's been there, like 400 or 500 inmates have got theological degrees, 4-year degrees. You know what I mean? Bachelor degrees from Loyola University and Tulane University and Baptist Theological Seminary in New Orleans. That's a big deal underneath his leadership. So his mom tells him, if you're going to take this job as a warden, you need to listen to the prisoners, because they are that's who you're over. And you need to learn to listen to them. You can't just take the job and rule them without paying attention to what they have to say. And he said he went into the job with the mindset that my mama said this. Now I have to listen to the needs and the wants of the people who occupy this place as prisoners, most of which will spend the rest of their life here and breathe their last breath here and eventually get buried in the premises of Angola. If you know anything about Angola, there's actual burial grounds there's more than one burial ground, but there's a modern burial ground where they bury prisoners who are indigent and don't have family members who want their bodies. They obviously bury them on the grounds. There's 18,000 acres, so there's more than enough acres to bury them. So they have a cemetery where they bury them. But it's not the only place that they bury inmates. Recently, Hunt Correctional Center, which is the diagnostic and reception center in the state of Louisiana, they started a cemetery, and now they're burying indigent inmates as well. So Angola and Hunt both have a cemetery to bury Louisiana inmates who don't have families that want to claim their bodies. Some say it's possible that the spirits of those men are wandering the grounds of the prisons, Who knows? That's a story for another time. But there's some good to take from this. And you judge for yourself. Share in the comments if you've ever known anyone who's seen a Catholic apparition move, or an apparition, whether it was in a statue form, a painting form, or a picture, or some kind of spirit move around inside, a church that they were in, that they were visiting. Well, anyway, there's another thing that happened at Angola prison. I want to end this video on this particular note. I thought it was really important. After the prison was dedicated in 2013, some time went by and they did the Sacred Heart of Jesus, is what they called it. And they were figuring out who was going to build this wooden crucifix of Jesus. You see it in a lot of Catholic churches. They love the imagery. And so you get these wooden carvings and these marble carvings. Well, they wanted to have that carving, and they called it the Sacred Heart of Jesus, for the front of where the altar was, where the priests would perform their duties. And right behind them, when you're sitting in the pews and you're looking forward, you see the priest, and you'll see this huge crucifix of Jesus hanging on the wall. And they said, what better way to do it than to hire or to put the job in the hands of an actual prisoner at Angola itself. And so they worked closely with the prison, and they pinpointed a guy named Marty James Hebert to carve this statue. He was already doing woodwork at Angola, and they got him to carve this statue. And after he carved, and I'm gonna put pictures, this is a picture of Marty right here, Hebert. He was 21 years old when he made it to Angola in 1995. He's still there today. He has a life sentence for second-degree unaliving, and because he got in a fight with another man, and obviously he regrets it because he's been in prison for about 30 years now, 30 plus years. But he said when the parishioners asked him and the funders asked him to design a statue, he didn't know if he could do it. He said he had to go back and think on it and, get his thoughts together. Should I build this statue? And this is his words. He said, when I was asked to carve the life-size Jesus for the crucifix, I had some doubts. He said, I never worked on anything so large and so lifelike. I enlarged the picture I was given and made a pattern of it. But I also wanted to carve my interpretation of the physical aspects of Jesus. He worked as a carpenter and therefore would have been strong, talking about Jesus. But in the last years on earth, as he was traveling and teaching, he would have eaten modestly, taking only what his body needed. Again, he's speaking about Jesus. The face was the most challenging. I used all of my imagination in how I could make it command a sense of peace. So he said when he was designing this statue, this crucifix of Jesus on the cross, he wanted it to represent a sense of peace. And this is what inmate Hebert is saying. He says, and this is on the anniversary in 2019, the 5th anniversary installation of the crucifix, Marty Hebert shared with the parish. He said, I am Marty James Hebert, the prisoner in Angola who carved the corpus for St. Brendan's Catholic Church. I feel honored to write a letter to the 5th anniversary commemorating its blessing, talking about the statue that he built himself. I would like to thank Father Matthew and all the parishioners for the many letters I have received, sharing your feelings of the carvings I made. I'm humbled to learn the corpus has touched your hearts. I remember back when I was working on it, I would begin each day with a prayer asking God to grant me knowledge and to guide my hands so I could be used for his purpose. And this is what he's saying about him obviously doing the statue. I have received letters from people telling me looking at the corpus gives them a sense of peace from their daily troubles. I have received letters from people of different races, each telling me to them the corpus looks like their own people. Perhaps God's will was for me to carve this corpus in the image everyone can relate to, and to see an image that reminds everyone of the power of God's love for us. If this was God's will for me, then I believed I served him successfully. I would like to thank Father Matthew and all the parishioners of St. Brendan's for their prayers and for providing me with the opportunity to serve our Lord in such a great manner. Signed, inmate Hebert. And I'm going to put a picture of his signature that he put on the back of the carving before they hung it on the wall, because, you know, all artists have to put their signature. No issue there. But this is the issue, and I'm going to put a picture up. This now is a picture of the actual carving that he did that hangs up inside of the Alamo prison on the site of Angola. My thing is this, is as I was talking to the inmate about seeing the images of Our Lady Guadalupe, and if you know anything, like I said, the imagery of Our Lady Guadalupe started in Mexico City, and it's been there's been reportings of Our Lady Guadalupe all over the world. But my question is, so far as I know, and I'm going to do some more research and I'll make another video later, no one has mentioned seeing the Jesus move on the cross, the crucifix, the carving of Jesus that hangs above the cathedral. No one's seen it move. No one's seen his face move, but they've seen Our Lady Guadalupe's face move. I have my thoughts on it. You know, I'm born a Catholic, but I am what you would call a non-denominational Christian. I love Jesus. I believe in the supernatural. I've seen things myself, and I'm always aware to pay attention to what's going on. I believe, in my opinion, that this is definitely a supernatural event that's occurring in Angola prison when it comes to this specific location and cathedral, the Alamo. But I have my questions on what it is and what it isn't. Please share in the comments what you think about this particular circumstances and these apparitions that people are seeing. What do you think about them? Do you think it's a supernatural thing, or do you think it's their imagination? Do you think the supernatural thing that they're seeing is good or evil? What do you think? Do you think it's actually Our Lady Guadalupe, the Virgin Mary, or do you think it's something else? Man, welcome to the Pen and The Shank, the most unusual and unique crime and prison channel experience on YouTube, where we talk about things like apparitions inside prison chapels. Give me a like and subscribe. Hit that bell notification so you don't miss when I drop the next wild, crazy video. Man, let's get it. Whoa, what's that I see over there?